Welcome back, everyone, and I hope you're having a fantastic morning. I'm so pleased to be moderating this final session, which is The Woman Beyond the Screen. I'm going to be talking to two amazing women, and I hope you enjoy this session and take a lot out of it. Some good tips and tricks to set you up for 2021. Before I start, I'd like to just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I'm coming to today and pay my respects to elders past and present. For those of you who have been with us for the last 2 days, you will know that there is a chat function, so you can send through questions and we will be able to moderate them and be asking both Del and Andrea later in the session. So before we kick off into the questions, bear with me for one moment because these women are just stellar. I do want to give you a little bit of background into who they are. So Del Irani, our first panelist today, is a US-based award-winning journalist and TV anchor who's hosted shows on BBC World News, ABC News Australia, and NHK World Japan. She also serves as a Goodwill Ambassador for World Vision Australia. She's currently moved to the US and she anchors a program called Deeper Look from New York on NHK World Japan, and is also a host on Escape from the City on ABC TV in Australia. Previously, Del was one of the main anchors on Australia's ABC News Breakfast, so I'm sure she is very well known to many of you. So thank you so much, Del, for joining us and slotting us in while you're in the US. Our second panel...
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our second panelist today is Andrea Clarke. She's the author of Future Fit, How to Stay Relevant and Competitive in the Future of Work. So relevant for what we're discussing today. Also previously a news reporter, she worked in Washington, DC as a correspondent, and Andrea covered major news events for Al Jazeera English and the Pentagon Channel and Thomas Reuters before working on humanitarian aid programs to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan. Amazing. So with an obsession for growing careers, Andrea founded Future Fit in 2012, way ahead of her time. Her business trains 1,000 people a year to be future fit for the 2020s. By accelerating skills around adaptive leadership, communication, reputation, capital, and resilience. So I've been privileged to get to know Del over some years, and Andrea Clarke more recently through some of the work that she's been doing with Global Victoria. So again, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. So we might just kick into it because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions coming our way. So throughout most of this year, a lot of us had really had to adapt to working from home. I know myself, never working from home. It's been quite a challenge having to, one, set up your space, but two, also present to a camera. And I know for both of you, this is something that you do every day. But for those of us who aren't accomplished journalists and are not used to presenting to a camera, it's a really new skill set. So I'd love to hear from both of you. What are your top tips to ensure that you're engaging and making the maximum impact on screen? Andrea, I might throw to you first.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gönül and Del. So lovely to be with you here today. I want to make the first point of saying that the future of work, whatever that looks like for you, is about your talent. It's not about the technology. So bringing your best self to work virtually really relies on the same principles that you would implement in an everyday office setting. Obviously, though, we're also reliant on the two-camera, the Zoom calls, Teams, whatever you're on. What's interesting to me about this is that the broadcast skills translate directly to the boardroom. And now there's no way anyone can get out of being in the spotlight. So my first piece of advice is to embrace the spotlight. Even if you're uncomfortable, you're entitled to have a voice. You get paid to have a voice. And so make sure that you consider the elements of speaking with authority. And that's really around, I say there are 5 things that help us speak with credibility and authority. And the first one's understanding our audience and what our audience actually needs from us. So it's not about us, it's about the audience. Secondly, body language, direct eye contact. Thirdly, use of language. So simple, powerful language, no jargon and no acronyms that people don't understand. Then there's the way we structure our content and our, I'm just blanking on the last one. Oh, and our vocal techniques. And I think the most important thing for me is structuring content. So if I'm going to deliver an effective short report, I want to do that by telling you around 3 things. So chunking information for your audience is really helpful because we can only process so much information at a time. So keep your audience with you, capture them in a really strong headline. That's such a news thing, but grab them in the headline and then give them what they need and be really clear about what you're asking of them. So we're seen in micro windows, that's our reality. And our job is to really pack a punch in that short window of time.
Thanks, Andrea. Amazing tips. I think we were all going to be taking so much out of this session. Oh.
Well, I mean, just going off what Andrea said, she certainly packed a punch, didn't she, in the few seconds that you have to answer that question. And I think that's she's leading by example there. I just want to add to a couple of the things that she said. Keep in mind, even for us broadcast journalists, this was a huge change. It was the first time I moved from a professional studio where, I didn't have to worry about the technical side of things. I didn't have to think about the camera or the lighting or my own hair and makeup. I was just focused on content, and that's shifted. So I would say there are two things that I want to focus on. One is what you can do from a technical standpoint, and the other is what you can do from a content standpoint, which really Andrea covered a lot of. The technical standpoint is, if you haven't already by now, really simple things. Just make sure that when you have an office space that has really good light, so you're clear, we can see you, because that's super important, and your sound, your audio, that that people can hear you. Once you have those two things set up, once you have that visibility, actual physical visibility, it does come down to content. And right before we got on this event, we were talking about whether we get nervous. Now, the truth is, no matter how long you've been in the business, and Andrea and I have been around for a while, you do get nervous, and it's about embracing those nerves and using them to your advantage. I mean, one of the things I always remember, and what I love about the job that we do, is that it's a very intimate, it's a very personal medium. You're talking to that person, you're from your home in their home, and especially when you're doing a presentation, if you get nervous, for example, right now, more than 500 of you are watching, oh my God, but you don't think of it in that way. You're like, it's that one person, it's that one, and picture your best friend, picture that person that's rooting for you in the background. And hopefully that will, give you the confidence to really deliver on the content of your presentation and do everything else that Andrea touched on, which she's talking about, starting with the headline, being punchy, and just shine in that limelight, because you do only have a glimmer of it.
Yeah, no, that's right. And thank you both for keeping it so real. I think we sometimes think we need to be perfect at everything, and you don't want to admit that, you may be nervous about something. But even for people that do this every day, I think it gives us license not to be so hard on ourselves, and to take that moment just to be a little kinder. So Del, I'm going to throw this next question to you, and Andrea, I'd probably like to hear your thoughts on this as well. But Del, you've worked all around the world. You're now in the US, you've worked across South Asia, you've worked in Australia. And sometimes you have to work with these teams that span, different continents, different time zones. And now we're all working virtually as well. For a lot of the women on our call today, they are either exporting or interested in exporting. So given your experience, what are some of the things, what are the tips that you would give the women in terms of working across, international teams?
Yeah. Look, one of the biggest advantages of being in lockdown and this pandemic, because, you have to look at the silver lining, there haven't been that many of them, is the fact that you can connect with so many people globally. So, I was supposed to anchor a program where I'm based in Los Angeles, but I would fly to New York and have a studio and broadcast from there. Instead, what you're seeing right now is my studio. This is the way in which I communicate with my producers in New York, and this is the place from which I broadcast now to the world. Certain advantages that have that have worked in my favor during this pandemic, and hopefully people who are watching this might be able to leverage similar things. I had a really strong network in Australia, right? Being on ABC News Breakfast and being there for 7 years, people like Gönül and lots of other events I used to MC in Australia, all of that disappeared when I moved here physically. The interesting thing is, with the pandemic, it opened back up again, because suddenly I was able to reach out to my network. And again, everybody's in this together. We're all stuck at home. I was like, hey, if there's virtual events I can help you with, if there's anything I can do. And one of the things that came about was I had, been talking to World Vision Australia for several years and really wanted to do work with them. But then I moved here. And this year, they obviously, doing great work around the pandemic. I started doing work with them virtually, which is after, 12 months of virtual work for them led me to be appointed Goodwill Ambassador. So, like I said, there are a lot of disadvantages of being stuck at home. I certainly miss the social aspect, but there are huge opportunities to connect with the global audience. And I know there are people that are joining us from Bahrain, from the Middle East, from all over. And again, if we were hosting this event in Victoria, how many people would actually be able to physically fly in and watch, as opposed to those who are at home tuning in now? So thank you for joining us.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned the Middle East. It's actually a nice segue. Andrea, you've worked in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, obviously very different markets to what we're used to here. So any tips that you could share in terms of your experience working across international teams?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I'd like to say that being perfect is boring. Back on the comms, perfect is boring. Don't go for perfect. Don't go for perfect. Go for growth. I think that's a really important piece for all of us. I always encourage people who I work with to, to really pursue understanding the way you work and understanding the way you present. And that means a few stumbles here and there, but so what? We're all in it. We are in it together. We do all support one another. And so look at every opportunity as an opportunity for growth, regardless of where that is in your career. I do think with regard to working across time zones, there's nothing more rewarding than working in a high performance team, that delivers against all odds and delivers against every kind of technical issue that you can possibly come up against. I think that what these teams have in common for me is trust and establishing and accelerating trust. We are all trading in trust through the 2020s. Now, it turns out that trust, there's a certain DNA to trust. So when someone's making a decision about whether or not to trust you, there are 3 questions that subconsciously run through the mind, and they are character. Does this person have my best interests at heart? Competency. Does this person have the skills and the knowledge and the resources to deliver what they say they're going to deliver? And thirdly is consistency. And this is the most important piece of trust. Is this person consistent in their behaviours? And I think that we can all recognise this trait. Perhaps at some point in our career, we've been managing someone and they've turned up on Monday to work and they've been brilliant and happy and enthusiastic. And then they turn up Tuesday and they're a different person. I think that we all can recognise that at some point in our career. That's really dangerous for trust. And so I feel like we all need to establish and accelerate trust in whatever way we can. And for me, not just having a love for communication, but comms is a huge part of this. And that's a founding and guiding principle of adaptive leadership is how frequently are you communicating and how actively are you communicating? There's always, when there's no comms, there's a vacuum, and that vacuum is a real issue when it comes to teamwork. So don't ever let there be a vacuum. Don't be afraid about over communicating as long as you're being clear about setting expectations and what everyone's role is. So everyone's really clear on what they need to deliver. That's a high trust environment, and plenty of research around to demonstrate that companies that have a high trust environment on average make 10% more than companies that don't.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrea. As you were going through those, the point around trading in trust, and you were going through the different components, I was like, I wonder if the third one's also going to be C, to help us remember. And it was. So trading in trust, character, competency, and consistency. I think we're going to be able to remember that one as well. Andrea, I might just stick with you onto the next question. And I'm starting to see some questions come through. So to all of our viewers, feel free to continue to pop that in the chat function, which should be at the bottom of your screen. But Andrea, your coaching business has been on the front foot in terms of delivering courses virtually. And now we've, in 2020, we're working in a very different environment. So how has the pandemic impacted your business, or have you seen that people are just far more responsive to it now?
Well, I think that everyone on this call can appreciate that the spreading of risk from a business point of view. So I've been doing face-to-face workshops since 2011, but in 2013, I started investing in digital learning. And so, by the time COVID came around, I was well and truly comfortable with translating the content and making sure that it had an equally high impact in an online digital environment. And, I'll be really candid with you and say I would have burnt through $100,000 of my own money investing in that, but I knew that the audience trend was going to change. I usually do 100 flights a year. Now, that's not sustainable for me, but also I knew that the trend was going to move where big businesses need to train and want to train more people more often and at a cheaper rate, quite frankly. So I was working heavily invested in digital because it's that beautiful collision of training, technology and television, and that's really my very happy space. So by January this year, we'd actually had a contract in place with Austrade to roll out a female emerging leader program with Austrade in their 30 markets and beyond around the world. So I'm just going to say it was me. It was all me. I was well placed. Yeah, I'm going to own it. I was well placed when COVID arrived. My only job was to migrate clients who were very used to having me in the classroom to online and help them feel comfortable about that migration, because online learning gets a bad rap, but when it's done properly with mature instructional design, it can be higher impact. And that's what we've actually found, that we're seeing on average a 30% greater capability lift through the digital platform, which is remarkable. But, I look back and think, gosh, I'm so glad I invested in digital all that time. So when you can see a change coming in the industry, this is such an important part of having an adaptive mindset. You cannot adapt to change if you do not see it coming. So when you see it coming, do whatever you have to do to get prepared to deliver that high quality service or product to your customers and clients, because they're going to need it. So get prepared and be on the front foot for when the change hits the market.
Thanks, Andrea. Del, we're going to head overseas and come to you and talk about your experience in the US. So currently based in LA, working across the East and the West Coast. How have you found that you've needed to adapt to these new audiences? I mean, still a Western culture, but have you found that you've had to really shift the way you approach things, and how are the audiences in the US compared to in Australia?
Yeah, and I have to say, just hearing what Andrea said, she was so ahead of the curve. We're in the same industry, but she was really, had positioned herself at the beginning of the year to be the best possible place to take advantage of the pandemic. I can be very candid with all of you and say the opposite was true for me. So, to your point, Gönül, in LA, had just the company I work for just invested millions of dollars for a brand new state-of-the-art studio in New York, which I was in Manhattan, extremely excited to present from. And starting in March, my flight's booked on Friday. Monday, the country shuts down. Bam, everything's closed. Now, there were two options. One was, I could have lost that contract. There was a bit of a period where everyone was just deer in headlights, frozen by what happened. But just to the point Andrea is making, it is about adapting. Fortunately, I quickly realized that, I have this little nook in the house. I had a couple of lights. And even before I started anchoring for that show, one of the things that I did was, started doing some Facebook Lives, started doing some LinkedIn Lives with other people, because people want to be connected right now. We're all so isolated. And we're all, no matter where we are in the world, there's this shared human experience. You could be tuning in Australia, in India, in the US, yet, we've all gone through the same thing, which is so rare if you think about it. And so to your point, Gönül, how does that work for me as an anchor? Well, it's a gift. It's a huge opportunity, because I'm able to broadcast to all these people all around the world. And whether that's an American, an Australian, and an Indian, a European, there's something that they get. There's some commonality, because that story of education in the pandemic, or health, or whatever, resonates globally. And so we're at this, it's a really, really unique time. And like I said, I'm the type of person that's always looking for that silver lining, always looking for that opportunity even when things are so uncertain as they have been.
Yeah, no, I think a positive outlook does attract good energy. So definitely with you on that. And I think, moving overseas at a time of a global pandemic takes guts, and you do need to be pretty resilient. So I think one of the other themes that we really wanted to draw out today was around having this adaptive and resilient leadership style. So Andrea, I guess, your book, Future Fit and How to Stay Relevant and Competitive in the Future of Work, does talk a lot to resilience. And your book was published last year in 2019, which feels like a million years ago, I'm sure. If you were going to do, an update for 2021, what would be your advice to people in leadership positions? And, how do people remain relevant, and how do people remain competitive? And also businesses as well.
Sure. Well, Gönül, you'll be happy to know that we are doing an update for June. So I'm revising Future Fit I know, which is really exciting. And so we should. And Bernard Salt, who wrote my introduction and afterword, is also going to be helping me out. So I think it's critical that I do that this year. I've deliberately been a bit quiet publicly this year because I felt like it's not the time to be lecturing people on what to do about their careers while we're absorbing the shock and awe of the pandemic and seeing how it's going to play out for each of us, which is going to be very different. I think the future of work looks very different. It's highly personal. It looks very different for everyone because it's totally dependent on what sector you're in. What I would say is that, Future Fit really is about the 8 core human skills that we need to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. And they're all going to land differently in a new environment, which is what we're seeing. So I think that around leadership, what we all need to realise is that a core competency of leadership is communication, it's creativity, it's empathy, it's understanding the point of view of others even when you don't agree. So those theory of mind skills. It's going to be increasingly about our network and realising that the hidden power lies in the networks that we're already connected with. And this is such a great example of what I'm talking about. Tapping your existing ties is going to be hugely beneficial for all of us, both individually and for our business. But I would say that we're all solving problems, new problems in a new market. This is about initiative, it's about attitude, and it's about continuous learning. I would advise, if it's one thing I could advise everyone, it's really pay attention to the market. Find out what skills are of value to your business and your industry and learn those skills. There are so many ways to learn, micro learning, micro credentials. It could be listening to a podcast, but commit yourself to continuous learning every week, a couple of hours every week. The World Economic Forum says we need 25 days a year. I think that we need more. Things are moving so fast and we need to be, if we're going to be a leader in our field, we need to be ahead of the curve and really listening and paying attention to what's going on in the market. And say we want to learn about fintech. Well, Oxford University has an amazing 6-week program on fintech. So, find out where those great courses are and invest in yourself even when your business is not investing in you. This is the greatest mistake people make, waiting around to be tapped on the shoulder. How can I help? How can I help you today? How can I further your career today? That doesn't always happen, and we're in a much looser and less structured environment now where it is up to you to redefine your structure and redefine how you're going to grow your career. So pursue continuous learning relentlessly would be my number one piece of advice for everyone.
Yeah, no, that's...
Can I just add to Andrea's point, because one of the other things that she mentioned was networking, and just to support what she's saying, I know, and this is somebody that moved to a new market and really has to start over and establish networks. Nobody, knows who I am. So really, like getting yourself out there. While it can feel like, yeah, but we're in lockdown, how do you network? I mean, isn't it? Don't you have your drinks and your this, and you might have Zoom fatigue? The reality is, again, you've actually got a real advantage to network, because the thing of, oh, I'm traveling. No one's traveling. They're at home, so that there is a chance that you might be able to catch them, right? So again, like sort of look at like the flip side of, who are those people that you've always wanted to get in front of, that you wish you could have a chat to, but they're always too busy, or you're always too busy. Well, now's your chance. Drop them a line on LinkedIn or whatever. And obviously be patient. Everyone's got personal lives and things going on. But just to support what she's saying, that's one way also that, you can be networking as well as educating and upskilling during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Totally.
It's critical to look at things from an opportunity perspective, as opposed to just always seeing the challenge. So I agree. Del, we've got some questions coming through. The first one I'm going to throw to you, Del.
Sure.
We've got someone sent through a question around, what lessons have you learnt, or are there any experiences you wish to share about being a public figure?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't really see myself as a public figure. So, but like I said, the lessons I've learned is that, use this as a chance to broaden your network, to broaden your base. Use this as an opportunity to grow, because you have one of two choices, right? You can either stagnate and, like Andrea said, be sitting there waiting. I'll use myself as an example. Move to the US, a huge market full of opportunities. Bam, everything is shut down. Now I could sit on my hands and be like, oh no, what terrible timing, and I can't go back to Australia and I'm stuck. Or I can say, what can I do from my quote unquote home studio that did not exist before March of this year? And you can really start putting yourself out there. And like I said, the other thing I think, that whether you're a public figure or just anybody really, is the empathy factor. The fact that this is historic. This is a shared human experience. And instead of asking, what can I gain, maybe ask the question, what can I give? How do I contribute to this conversation, whether that's making people feel more connected, making people feel more involved. And I think, if you do those things, in the back of your head, remember, 2021 is around the corner. This is going to end. And in a matter of months, things are going to go back to normal. And you're going to look back on this time. And when you look back, what do you want to see? Do you want to look back and say, oh, I did all right, or I survived and now I'm ready to thrive, or whatever. Or in Andrea's case, I was ready. I had my crystal ball. I knew it was coming, and but I would suggest that, the light is there at the end of the tunnel. So no matter how easy or hard the last, sort of 6, 8, 12 months have been, look ahead now and get yourself ready, because things are going to get back, and you want to be at the front of the line when they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add to that, Gönül, if you don't mind?
Yeah, please.
I love Del's attitude. It is all about attitude and initiative, but it's also about product and market fit. So as everyone on the call will appreciate, you might have the right product, but the market isn't ready for you, and vice versa. And I saw that. My father was an entrepreneur, and he actually imported a full recycling plant from Chicago in about 1984. And tried to sell it to the Brisbane City Council, but he was just before his time, and the whole thing fell over. So, it's interesting to look at historically what was kind of produced for the market when the market wasn't ready. But I think that's about really listening, paying attention, and picking your timing, but also investing, knowing that there's a degree of a gamble that's there. But this is about creating value. We all need to really consider how are we creating value, and with the introduction of AI and machine learning and all kinds of the technology that we're seeing, that only frees us up to consider how we can continue to contribute, as Dale said, and continue to contribute, and think about how else we can bring value to the product or the service that we're working on. So I think there are extraordinary opportunities ahead for us in the next couple of years, but it really requires that divergent thinking, that creative thinking that we have to engage to innovate.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea, I'm going to stick with you. We've got a question come through. So I'm going to ask you this probably in two parts. So someone who's obviously aware of your work and some of the things that you really push for and talk about. So recognising your passion about, the importance of reputation capital, can I first ask you to explain to those of us who may not be as familiar with this term, what exactly you mean by reputation capital, and then how important you think it is for women in business today?
Oh, gee, thank you for asking. Reputation capital is a new measure of trust in the marketplace. So in the 1980, we had personal brand, but it can stay back there with shoulder pads. We've now got...
pad though. It's
Interpret that any way you want, but the terminology is really important here. So Rachel Botsman coined this term. She's an Oxford scholar, wrote a brilliant book called Who Can You Trust? So reputation capital is a new measure of trust in the marketplace. And the terminology has changed because technology has simply amplified how often and frequently we're seen. And so she's called it that because our reputations are already leaving a trail. If you work for Airtasker, eBay, Uber, you know what I'm talking about. You are recommended. Your livelihood relies exclusively on your rating. Now, I believe that is 100% going to apply to our professional identity, and it already is. So our workplace identity is really critical. What reputation capital means is that we need to, it's the sum total of both our online and offline behaviour. So we need to curate and start being a lot more considerate about what we're seeing in terms of our online presence. And I like to think about that in 4 steps, which I'm going to run through. First one's purpose. What is the conversation that you want to start in your career? That's your purpose. What does that look like? What does it sound like? Who do you want to impact? And then purpose number 2, position. What platforms do you want to start this conversation on? That might only be LinkedIn. You might feel safer on Yammer or Workplace, something internal to your business, but figure out where you want to be seen. Thirdly, your audience. What circles and communities do you want to impact with that message? And fourthly, your activity. What is your broadcast plan? When do you want to communicate? What do you want to communicate to people in your circle, and how often? So those are 4 steps to curating your reputation capital. Sounds easy, but this is a lot of work because it involves doing almost an audit of your online presence, which is not a very pleasant thing to do, at least, you know, for some of us. But it involves an audit. It involves really thinking about what you want to contribute. And there's no doubt that HR managers are going to have less and less time to choose candidates. So I have no doubt that in a couple of years, they're going to be looking at our LinkedIn profile, seeing who we're associated with, which I think is really important, and seeing what people are rating us. I might be rated for my creativity in 12 months. I don't know, but the algorithm certainly exists on LinkedIn. So how are you going to be more considerate and curate an authentic and meaningful version of yourself online that totally matches up and is aligned with who people experience in person? So this is about being totally aligned, but it's about giving the world an accurate reflection of what you believe in and what you stand for.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think I remember reading somewhere about how, working on yourself is your ultimate masterpiece, right? So it's about that, continued learning, constantly, doing a refresh of yourself. Like you said, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be seen? Just being really mindful of that.
It's about being, I'll just add, it's about being purposeful. It's about being intentional. I do not think there is a more dangerous time to be neutral than in the next 5 years. There's no room to be average. There's no room for neutrality. You've got to take a position. You've got to take a stand. And when you think about the role models and the leaders that you really admire, I bet they're very clear on that. I bet they have a totally up-to-date LinkedIn profile with a pretty well-written, candid and conversational paragraph about who they are, what they stand for, and how they might be able to help you. So it's about being purposeful about your workplace identity. And there was a recent study done where 50% of 5,000 people felt that less visibility in the workplace was going to really impact their career trajectory. And I think this is very alarming for businesses. So businesses have got to figure out, how do we engage and develop staff so they feel like they're seen? And for individuals, this is all about reputation capital. This is all about working on your workplace identity so you feel seen and you feel as though you are contributing.
Thanks so much, Andrea.
That's just brilliant, Andrea. I mean, you make me want to just jump off and fix my LinkedIn profile straight away. Do an audit of all my social media. I'm going to try. Those 4 points were brilliant.
It's time consuming. Yeah, thanks, Del. And I think for women in business, this is everything. This is everything. Business is about relationships. And relationship, like that's the long game in business, and we're all playing the long game. So, we want to cultivate and really work on those relationships with people who are important to us in our network. And, you want to be someone who people want to work with. And so how are you going to, assess yourself in person and then translate that to the online world? Because we are now going to be seen by thousands and thousands of people on LinkedIn, for example, thousands more than what we'll ever meet in person, particularly in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And in particular, when you think about the future of work and with so much automation coming through, I always think, even from our own team's perspective, what are those things that are critical for us? What are the things that you can't automate? And it actually comes down to two things for me. One, absolutely the relationships. You cannot outsource that. You need to own that. And two, it's around creativity. So I think really drawing on both of what you've said, I think the future of work, you do need to keep innovating, keep thinking differently, outside the box, and absolutely be really committed to those relationships, and not just fostering them when you need them, but being really mindful and doing it consistently through the year. We've got a really interesting question that's come through. So I'm happy to throw it to anyone who wants to take it first. And the question is, everyone's experience of this year is different. How do we acknowledge the struggles and avoid always painting a positive picture? How important is staying connected to this?
That's a great question. I think it's everything, because we can't innovate unless we understand and embrace what hasn't necessarily gone wrong. And that's life for many of us. I've no doubt that the number of businesses that will liquidate after March we're going to see a rapid rise in that. I know that there are concerns around businesses now using JobKeeper as a cover to stay afloat. That's been acknowledged by the ACCC. So I think on a personal level, though, being honest and candid about what has and hasn't worked is incredibly helpful, particularly for women in business. I think women need to talk more about the financials. We all need to be very open, as open as you are comfortable being, but let's talk about the finances. I love hearing women who are super financially savvy. There's always something to learn from that, because the commercials are hard. The P&L lines are, they're really difficult to keep consistent, especially in a market that's moving. So I think the more open and honest conversations we have about the details, the more we can get out of it. I personally won't turn up to a networking event if we're only talking about, celebrities and what they've achieved, because that's bringing nothing to my world. I want to learn real things. I'm a real woman in business. I want to hear the real lessons, because I want to be able to capitalize on those and avoid the ones that have cost people money. That's real. And we are all in the business, I think, of being real business women. So let's have more real conversations around what hasn't worked this year, but what is working for the years ahead.
Yeah. And I mean, to the point of the person that submitted that question, I totally get it. Like, it's all well and good to be positive and optimistic. And as I've mentioned a few times, like, try and look at the silver lining or the bright side. But let's be honest, it's been a really tough year. And one thing that I think, you should do, or you should try and do, is say, just go easy on yourself. Look, it's not just you. It's been tough on everybody. And, if you're comparing yourself to people that are just constantly like, no, this is great, I'm thriving. Oh, well, maybe you should connect with the people that like Andrea said, that are a bit more real, and that you're going to be able to have those authentic conversations with, and readjust your expectations. Look, again, when I started 2020, if you would have asked me what my goals were for this year, this was supposed to be my career year. This was going to be the year that I got my green card and I'm going to hit the market, and none of that happened, but that's okay. Like, is it what I wanted? No, but it's about, readjusting your expectations and going, you know what, I'm not the only one that's suffering. We've all gone through this together. I'm looking ahead, but pace yourself. When you talk about profit loss, you talk about the PL statement. This might not be the year that you're in black, or that you have amazing numbers. But hey, maybe you didn't make it to red, and that's pretty darn good, So yes, I totally get what you're saying about it's hard to be optimistic, it's hard to be positive, and you don't have to be, but just catch yourself, because maybe you're comparing 2020 to 2018. You know, and you know, it's not. This is a weird time. It's a historic time, and it's a time you'll be talking about, you know, 10, 20 years, and people, your kids or grandkids will be asking you, were you there during the pandemic? And you'll be like, yeah, and it was really tough, you know, but there were some good things, and we survived. So yeah.
That's right. And when you think about it, some of your greatest growth and development actually comes from the struggles. You can't learn so much when everything's positive. So I think if you try to take a lesson out of every struggle, I think you're going to set yourself up and be realistic as well. I know one of my colleagues, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, gave me the best words of wisdom, and it's he told me this. I think it was in 2011. It was actually on my first work visit to India, and I'd had one bad experience at the end of the trip, and I think I probably felt a little bit sorry for myself. And he said, Gönül, on our good days, we have happiness. On our bad days, we have experiences. And on our worst days, we have lessons. Now, I cannot tell you how that has guided me through my career ever since. And so every time I have something that's not exactly as scripted, you kind of go, okay, well, that's an experience. I'll be able to talk about this in years to come. Or wow, that was a really difficult moment for me, and how am I going to take the lessons out of that and really improve? So I think, I think that was a great question. We're getting lots of questions coming through, and so I'm going to again throw this one open to whoever wants to answer it first. Based on your experiences this year, what is the one thing you would like to take forward into 2021? And what is the one thing you would like to leave behind?
Okay, I'll kick off on this one. I think the one thing that I would like to take forward into 2021 is I do hope that at least some element of this, you know, virtual connectivity, the ability to, sorry, apologies for that. That's my dog. This is one of the things about doing a home broadcast. You know, it is that you can stay connected globally. So I really hope that part of it definitely stays. But I think the part that I would like to leave behind is definitely the isolation. You know, it would be great to get on a plane again. It would be great to connect with people. So I think, you know, I think having a little bit of both would be ideal. I wouldn't say, like I said, you know, 2020 hasn't been all bad, but hopefully once the economy and the global economy recovers, you know, there will still be opportunities to do some virtual stuff as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Dal. Andrew, did you want to have a crack at that as well?
Yeah, two quick things. What I would keep is understanding where I sit on the performance curve. And this is a question for everyone on the call. Where do you have just enough stress that allows you to perform well, and when you're hitting burnout? So understanding where you are on the performance curve has been really important for me, especially when you're running, you know, a number of Zoom calls a day. You know, I think controlling my time, having a lot more control of my time is something that I will take forward forever from here. That's been a huge upside for me in lockdown, because, you know, there's no point organising a Zoom call at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when your performance and your energy is at an all-time low in the day. So knowing where your peak performance is in the day is really important. And that's been something I'll take forward in the next couple of years. I think leaving something behind, you know, I'm not sure I'd leave anything behind. I feel like there have been, you know, lots of tough situations. I think that I'll take it all with me, because I feel like I've gotten so much out of this year. There's nothing I'd like to leave behind. I mean, isolation, I don't know. I mean, I do isolation okay, probably better than other people, because I'm inherently introverted. So I get my energy from being alone. If anything I need to be aware of personally, it's that I need to really push myself to go out and be more social. So it's a reminder to me to make more of an effort. And, you know, it's no wonder I'm single at 45. Like, you know, big shock. Like, make an effort, I think, is what I'd like to leave behind is, or just a lesson, you know, is make more of an effort, because I am naturally inclined to work by myself, stay inside, and not push against isolation. So that's my main personal issue.
It's
Andrea,
funny how many of us who work in broadcast are like that, though.
Really?
That, get our energy from inside. It's very, very similar for me. It's incredible.
I'm so relieved to hear that, because I know that lockdown has been a real nightmare for, tens of thousands of people. And I'm in touch with the pain that goes with being in lockdown for 16 weeks at a time. So I have to be very aware that I have a different experience compared to other people.
I wouldn't have picked either of you as introverts. I do have a friend who is quite outgoing, and she says she's an outgoing introvert. So I'll put
I like that.
both outgoing introverts. The questions are coming in thick and fast, so I'm going to try to do my best to get through them. So another great question from the audience is, when did you know this is what you wanted to do, and has your journey surprised you?
So when did I know this is what I wanted to do? I didn't know for a long time. I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a broadcast journalist or anything like that. There were no female role models out there that looked and sounded like me, especially not on Australian television. So it was something that I came upon in my early 20s when I was working as a field producer for this obscure media company. I basically took the job that your parents tell you not to take, that involves lots of travel, very little pay, but it was doing that gave me the confidence, and I would go to press conferences, and so that itself, the experience of doing it, brought me alive. And when I started to do it, I was like, oh, this is what I meant to do. And a lot of it was feedback from peers. Obviously, when people say, oh, great question, or wow, you had the confidence to ask that, it gives you that encouragement. So that's to answer the first part of the question. What was the second part? Sorry, Gönül?
Has your journey surprised you?
Oh, definitely. Oh my goodness. I ended up in India, working for initially a local channel, a national English 24-hour English news channel, and BBC World News after that, which I thought, okay, that's it. I've arrived. BBC 26. I'm done. And then, sure enough, one of the biggest privileges and biggest highlights was actually coming home to Australia and getting to work for the national broadcaster. If somebody would have told me I would have been on News Breakfast for 4 years, I would have never believed them. I mean, nobody would have believed them. My family wouldn't have believed them. So, yeah, and it continues to surprise. Like I said, coming to the US, being in lockdown and broadcasting a show from LA called Deeper Look from New York that goes around the world. It's full of surprises, but that's the thing. You just gotta roll with the punches. And I just really want to quickly make a point, Gönül, because what you said about that colleague of yours who told you about the good days and the bad days. As a business journalist, one of the pieces of advice I got from a fellow business journalist once, especially when I was going through a bit of a downtime in my career, she said, when you look at the growth chart of a company, you never see, it's never just a straight line. It's always a bit ziggy-zaggy. And she goes, that's how growth is in life. It's about the overall trajectory. As long as you're going upwards, even if it's a little bit down right now, it'll climb back up again. As long as that direction is there, you're going to be fine. So maybe 2020 has been the year where it's sort of dropped a little bit, like the Aussie dollar. But, it's starting to pick up again. And as long as it keeps going up, you don't want the dollar to go up, but, you're heading in the right direction. So I don't know if that analogy works, but it works in finance.
That's a great way to look at it, because I think some of those setbacks you get when it's whether, you had your eye on a job and you didn't get it and you feel like the whole world is crashing in around you, that's the moment that you get a chance to actually reinvent yourself and, spring back. So I think absolutely, I completely can relate to that, and I've experienced that in my own career. Like I said, lots of questions coming through. So Andrea, I might throw the next question to you. And your bio has sparked some interest. What did doing humanitarian work in Iraq and Afghanistan and other challenging environments teach you about resilience, and did it help you learn about yourself?
Thanks. That's a great question. It taught me that resilience is a doing word. You can't just say the word resilient and hope to be more resilient. You've got to go through the ugly stuff. You've got to drag yourself through the mud, both mentally and physically, in every way possible to build resilience. And I think, Del, I've got to tell you, moving to a foreign country where you've got no contacts and, you know, no springboard is, I think, I know for me, I really applaud you for doing it. It's a massive move, and there's nothing more, you know, there are very few things more challenging than starting a career in a foreign country. So that to me has always been a huge learning curve. You know, when I moved to Washington, I had no job, no visa technically, and no money. I had $500 and I knew that I had 5 business days to start getting freelance work. Otherwise, I had to turn around and go home. So those are the kind of deadlines that I seem to thrive under.
You're such a journalist.
Such a journalist. Love the deadline. Highly motivating. But what working, you know, I loved my time. I did a degree in defence studies because I always wanted to be a war correspondent. So I had no hesitation going to Baghdad. I'd always really wanted to experience a war zone. And when I got there, you know, it's all very real. When you step off the plane and Baghdad International Airport is riddled with bullet holes, and you get picked up by former special forces guys in a 5-car convoy, and they tell you, they walk you through the drill, you know, in the airport car park. This is what's going to happen if we get ambushed, and they're not stuffing around. So I felt it was unfair that everyone had an AK-47 and I didn't, but nevertheless I had to park my attitude and sit in the back seat quietly, which was a first for me. But, you know, these are all wonderful experiences where you get to connect with people on all levels. And what I loved about being in Baghdad was, you know, my job was to bring more attention to infrastructure, microfinance, food security for the group that I was working with on Capitol Hill by filming stories of people. So for me, what a brilliant opportunity to connect with real Iraqis going through the real day-to-day grind of having a US occupation, for lack of a better word. So I thought it was an incredible experience, and I was so present in all of those moments because these are moments that you will never replicate in your career, and I value every one of them. I still keep in touch with my camera crew that I worked with in Baghdad, who have since migrated to Canada. But resilience is a doing word. You've got to get out there and you've got to do it no matter how much it hurts. And that's how you build resilience. You don't build resilience by being at home on the couch, you know, whinging to girlfriends. That's not how real resilience is built and kind of rewired in your brain.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Andrea. Yeah, I think this year has definitely given us a lot of experience in using that skill. Still lots of questions. So I'm going to ask this question of you, Del, and then come to the last 2 questions, and we'll split it throw it to both of you. So Del, to what extent do you think your gender has created challenges or opportunities for you in your career?
I think that's really interesting. I think that, you know, there was a period of time where for me it's gender, and I'm at a cross section of gender and ethnicity as well. You know, I have my last name's Irani. I was born in India, but I'm Australian. I confuse the heck out of people because they just don't know what I am and where I belong. So, you know, when I was starting out, those things were challenges. You know, I got rejected from jobs because I wasn't Australian enough. I wasn't Indian enough. You know, and it really, really worked against me. Now we're going through a very different period of time in the last sort of 5 years, you know, 5 to 7 years, I'd say. Things have really flipped, and even more so. I mean, especially in the US, you feel there's such an energy. The Me Too movement, and, you know, the recent political events, for example, you know, obviously Biden and Harris, you know, winning the presidential nomination. These have really energized that the female voice, the female movement. I mean, even just this event where you've got all these amazing, powerful women and men that are there supporting us, joining and, you know, being interested in this dialogue. So I think now is actually a really exciting time to be a woman. And, you know, even if you're a woman of color, it's really, it's an advantage, which is really strange because I've never focused on that, because like I said, you know, if I focused on it in the past, it was a disadvantage, and I don't want to focus on it now because I'd rather just focus on my skills and experience that's gotten me here. you know, this, that other stuff really shouldn't matter. But you really can't, you know, I can't say that without saying thank you. Thank you to the women that broke those barriers. Thank you to the women that continue to support other women, and the men that continue to support it and push women up in the chain as well. Because, yeah, it is a good time, I think, to be a woman and to have that strong female voice.
Excellent. So I'm going to try and wrap 2 questions into one. I know we've got 3 minutes. Del, I'm going to start with you, just to kick us off. Who has helped you be the strong and influential woman you are? And the second part of that question, if we can, is what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Great questions. I'll try and keep it brief because I know we're running out of time, and I want to hear from Andrea as well. But who has helped me be a very strong mum? You know, she essentially raised 3 girls. She's Indian immigrant, came to Australia. You know, you're talking about moving countries and doing it. Now that I'm in my 30s, I think, oh my God, how the hell did she do it? I was so not grateful. But certainly strong mum, strong grandma, looking at public figures like Oprah, always really admired her. And leaning on the strong women that I've worked with, Virginia Trioli, you know, a close confidant, close friend, just a powerhouse. So I get my energy from people like I get my energy from the both of you. You both are so accomplished, you know, and just learning from you is where I get my strength from as well. What would I tell my 20-year-old self? Don't be in such a rush. Although I should probably tell that to my 37-year-old self as well, and she wouldn't listen either, because it's always. But yeah, I would say, you know, just keep at it. I love what Andrea said. Resilience is a doing word, and you know, the more you do, the more. And I have had a lot of failures. For all the successes we're talking about, let's be perfectly candid. There have been multiple rejections, multiple failures, which continue into 2020. Right, it's there even right now. But don't give up. You will get there. Even if it takes you, you know, a lifetime, you will get there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Del. Really appreciate those tips as well. Andrea, over to you. Who has been that force for you, or who's influenced you to be the strong woman that you are, and what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Thanks, Gönül. Well, my father raised, like Del, I've got 2 sisters, so my father raised 3 girls, and he treated us like 3 boys. He was expecting Michael, Andrew and Stuart, and he got Megan, Andrea, Scully. And he treated us the same as he would 3 boys. He took us fishing, took us motorbike riding, and there was just there was no gender lens going on in our family. And my mother always said to me, why be the passenger when you can be the pilot? So I had 2 pretty strong role models in my parents. And I would agree with Del. Slow down. If I could tell myself one thing in my 20s, slow down and enjoy it. But we always feel like there's an urgency to everything we do, and there's not. Slow down, you know, respect your own time, respect what it takes to grow, and respect the people around you. I think that I was really steamrolling through my 20s and 30s, and I did not have enough respect for the people who came before me, and I didn't show people enough respect. And I can see that now when I'm approached by people, it's very transactional, and I cringe because I think, oh, I hope that I never did that to someone and made them feel like they were a transaction, because none of us like to be used. You know, we need warm and sincere communication, you know, when we're forming and working on relationships. So I think really respecting people around you is an important lesson for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience will agree. You have both been amazing, inspiring, incredible panelists for us, and we're going to take so much out of this. Thank you both so much for your time. We're going to now go into the wrap up. But really grateful. And I think there'll be so much that we can take out of this. We might do a little bit of a notes and send it to our participants. So thank you both so much, Del, and thank you so much, Andrea.
Thanks, Gönül. Thanks, Del.
Thank you both. Great to be part of it. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I hope, you've enjoyed the last of our sessions. We did promise you that we would be having conversations that inspire learning, growth, and just that continual development for yourself. So I hope you will agree that the conversations that have been shared over the last 2 days have done just that. We set out today over the last 2 days, I should say, to really build on what was kick-started in March, where we brought those 60 women from around the world together to connect with Victorian women. Well, to have 500 women register for this conference over 30 countries, I think is great testament to the fact that we have been able to hit that, and so grateful for all the amazing questions and being able to have that really genuine, open conversation and dialogue with all of you today. So I guess for us moving forward, we heard a lot of things over the last couple of days, and the one around the network and the hidden power in your networks is critical. And stay tuned to get some more correspondence from Global Victoria, because we do want to make sure that we can build on this and that you can all start to really connect with the women that you heard from or other women that may have been throwing some of those questions. So I just want to finish by thanking everyone as well. And the virtual format, while it was the first time for us with the Global Victoria Women Initiative, I think that the unique stories that each of the panellists brought really put the spotlight on these female export heroes. So again, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank all the panellists over the last 2 days: Elizabeth Lewis-Gray, Jo Horgan, Julie Hirsch, Lin Jacobs, Amy Zhang, Tu Nguyen, Jeanette Chi, Denny Francisco, Tanya Moss, and of course today for this session, Irani and Andrea Clarke. I also want to thank our fabulous moderators, some of the incredible women across the Global Victoria Network. So Michelle Wade, our Commissioner for South Asia, Rebecca Hall, our Commissioner for Southeast Asia, and Natalia Garono, Victoria's Head of Post in Latin America. So I hope you've taken the opportunity to, again, be inspired, taken some tips and tricks. I know from yesterday's conversation, there was a lot of women writing in to us saying how they loved Jo Horgan's shift from the word pivot to pirouetting, and just the need to constantly reinvent and change yourself. Lin Jacobs yesterday talked to us about that need for that human connection, and just the most simplest thing about making eye contact with people and just really, reaching out, how critical that is. And today, hearing as well from the last panel as well, just to how important those networks are and how you can get your power back by being authentic and curating your development and your own career every moment. So before I wrap up, these events don't happen by accident. And I'd also like to thank the amazing and incredible women and men in Global Victoria for bringing this event to you over the last 2 days. I'm sure you'll agree that it's been a great success, and they are so committed to helping women really trade successfully in international markets. So can I start by thanking Emma Lawrence, Daniela Maskey, Maddie Sexton, Pamela Wearing, Jane Conroy, Jodie Stevens, Chris, Cheryl Harris, and Sarah Sahaley. Thank you. You all go above and beyond to support these women, and we can't wait to reconnect with you all once we head into the new year. So until then, please stay safe over the holiday period. And as we head to wrap up the session, I just want to leave you with a short video, which again captures the passion and heart of everything we do at Global Victoria. Please stay in touch, and we look forward to connecting soon. Bye.
The export opportunity is really all about getting yourself out there and being able to actually expand your network.
And our vision is to serve 2 billion consumers, and we want to create 100 million job opportunities globally.
In those early days when you enter a market, you do need credibility and you need someone to open the doors for you.
They know who the big players are. They know what new projects are about to happen. Having the status of government right behind you is very important in the cultures of Asia and the Middle East.
We're a safe place to do business. We've got a lot of friends in the world and we like doing business here. My dream has always been to go global while also celebrating my roots here in Victoria. Having the support of Global Victoria to help me realise those dreams is extremely humbling.